A long time no upload, people. It has been an embarrassing long time since I last uploaded. Without diving too deep into it, my mental health was, not good. It still isn't great, but it's definitely better. I can go a day without considering going on the Nathan Explosion diet, which is about all I can really ask for at this point. At least that's how I felt before I read the book we will be discussing today. All progress I made on my mental health? Gone. Prozac can handle a lot of things. My childhood trauma, my dissociative episodes, the near uncontrollable urge for the Nathan Explosion diet. However, the one thing it cannot handle is religious dystopian cannibalism. Yeah, we're on an adventure today. Meat by Joseoh D'Lacey is a grotesque meta-commentary on religion, corruption, and the meat industry. For as vile and disgusting as I found this book, it's equal parts beautiful. The beauty comes from both the masterful way that it is written and strangely engaging plot. You don't want to be excited to read this book, but you are. And once you pick it up, it's very hard to put down. With that said, I am going to be throwing up a trigger warning. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to put here, since this book has literally every trigger. So here's a list and a moment to read it before we continue. Now, the way this book is written, you have multiple storylines with multiple characters. Some of them are short and more used as an expositional tool, just to show you how this world works. Others are more integral to the plot and thus could be considered main characters. I will try my best to give you a straight rundown of the intermingled storylines, but please keep in mind, I don't do straight very well. So to help with that, I'm going to give you a brief rundown of these main characters. First up, we have Rick Icepick Shanty, an overworked meat plant worker who is the focal point of this tale. We also have John Collins, professional heretic, as he preaches to this carnivorous town how meat is toxic and there's not a need for it to survive, which completely contradicts the philosophy of our last two main characters. Rory Magnus, who runs the meat plant with an iron fist for the sake of keeping the money flowing, and Parson Mary Simon, who disagrees with the teachings of John because it completely contradicts her cannibalistic Bible. Now, John and Rick are the main protagonists to Rory Magnus, who is probably the worst villain I've read about in a hot minute. And after this, you will understand why. Remember all those lovely trigger warnings I tossed up for you? Yeah, Rory's the cause of about 100% of them. Mary, I wouldn't consider good or evil. She's just a woman following the religion she was taught since birth. Though I do not agree with some of her actions and her inability to mind her own business annoying, she is not evil. She is not Rory. She is just stupid. Meat starts off with a small biography about Rick. He is the top stun gun operator at Magnus Meat Slaughterhouse. He is in charge of knocking the cattle unconscious for the rest of the butchering process. This job does take a toll on him. He never lets it show, as his family status in the community is very much reliant on his job. He copes with the stresses of his life by running for miles at a time to clear his head, and Rick does this for his wife Maya, hate her, and his twin daughters Hema and Hersha. My hatred for Maya manifested very early on when she begs Rick to bring meat home and he refuses. In this town, it's taboo to be skinny and not eat meat. Rick and his family are thin, and it's unclear exactly what that means, as the status quo in this town is to basically be super overweight from eating the meat all the time. As a result of how thin they are, Maya tries to manipulate her husband into bringing meat home by performing on him while he is sleeping. Yeah, not a fan of this book already. The only way she lets him finish is if he promises to bring meat home for dinner. How romantic. It's obvious that the shanties are different. With Rick's job, they do have access to the most premium cuts of meat. Yet, they are vegetarians, and the reason Rick does not like to eat meat, I kind of already spoiled.
Flashback.
Religious dystopian cannibalism.
Rick spends his entire work life participating in the slaughter of the Chosen, who are the poor unfortunate souls who are bred to be the meat and milk supply of the town. Yes, it's exactly what you think. Let's move on. Now, this next bit of information may seem irrelevant, but trust me, it is unfortunately important. Get ready for ick. This book describes how the MMP workers like to watch a specific bull by the name of Blue 712 during mating season. For the sake of your own sanity, I'm not going to go into detail about how Blue 792 is a bald toothless with a rare set of testicles at the ripe age of 22. No. I will spare you from the fact that some of the cows that were bred were between the ages of 12 and 16. Specifically, Richard watches a struggling 14-year-old cow named White 047 give birth to a calf made with Blue 792. She is also important. Please bear with me. Now, contrary to the social norms of this town, Richard was present when his wife gave birth to their twin daughters. So upon seeing what we, the readers, understand as a teenage girl struggling to give birth with no one around, he assisted her getting into a better position to birth the baby. He is described as the only man in the barn who understood what it was about human and bovine labor that was so similar. Okay. His compassion for the chosen and refusal to eat meat are really early indicators that Rick is not like other girls. He can even understand the language of the chosen, which, given the physical deformities of them, they can only communicate in hisses and taps, and somehow Rick can decipher it. We are introduced to a man named John Collins. He is a man who holds gatherings where he speaks to people about how everyone is connected as brothers and sisters in life. The people who attend these gatherings risk everything: their social status in the town, the love of their families, and even their lives. Going against the grain in this town can be deadly, but people still come to see John because that's the only real peace they feel in this weird-ass place. He preaches that we don't need meat to survive. We don't even need food to survive. Basically, he likes to teach people about breatharianism, which I'm pretty sure is a real thing that people talk about, but I don't know much about it, so I'm not going to dive into it. Given this town runs on the meat plant and some strange religion based around the cannibalistic Bible that they called the Book of Giving, they're committing death penalty level crimes, which is why John is considered a prophet to some and a heretic to most. Rick does end up going to one of these meetings and speaking to John, who holds no ill will towards him for his job, given that he came to him and shows remorse and empathy for the chosen. John gives Rick some exercises so that he can learn how to live better without meat. He's hesitant, but Rick eventually relents and does. He ends up diving so deep into the exercises that he's slowly weaning himself off of needing food at all. However, he does not stop Maya from feeding meat to the kids. He's basically telling himself that this marriage isn't going to work, and that once it falls apart, he's going to take the kids and teach them how to live without meat. This is all thanks to the heretic prophet John. So that was our prophet. Let's talk about our pervert. Now, this part of the story is very graphic and disturbing. His little segment in the book is really just to serve how brutal and vile Rory Magnus is, as well as giving us a full confirmation that
they're making our food out of people. Silent breed is people!
Gerville Snipe, who I will call Gerbil because it's easier for me and every time I see his name I keep wanting to say Gerbil, he's a lonely dairy supervisor at the meat plant. Again, exactly how it sounds. Our boy Snipe here has a mother that wants him to marry. We learn very fast why he's not married and why no one should want to marry him. See, Gerbil here likes to help his cows when he notices their udders are sore. He rubs balm on them, which rubs him the right way, if you know what I mean. If that wasn't problematic enough, this particular cow he found himself interested in is White 047, the same 14-year-old cow that Rick helped give birth. See, it's all connected, you just had to bear with me. He is able to hide his secret attraction to the cattle, but not for much longer. After an incident that involves two dairy boys using a high-pressure hose on White 047, Gerbil tries to comfort the scared cow. In comforting her, he becomes a little too excited. Things happen and he's caught by his dairy workers, who promptly report him to Rory. And Rory punishes him by turning him into meat. It is specifically stated in the book, when you cease to become townfolk, you become meat. The process of turning him into meat includes being castrated, his tongue removed, dipped in chemicals that remove all the hair from his body. His fingers and toes are also cut off. Now, this is the process that all new chosen go through when they're babies. After this, he is stunned, gutted, skinned, and with that, his life is finally over. Before this, it's extremely hinted at that the livestock they keep is purposefully mutilated people. They are described as having human-like features like fingers, toes, human-like eyes, but it isn't until this exact moment that it's 100% confirmed. Maya and Rick's daughters, Hema and Hersha, are sick. Maya believes that this is a direct result of him not bringing home meat. As a result of the girls' sickness, they are visited by a welfare parson by the name of Mary Simonson. A parson is like their religious officers. They follow the Book of the Giving to the T and impose it on everyone in town. For this occasion, Rick did bring home meat for the meal, as the parsons are restricted to eat meat with all 3 meals. Mary is suspicious as to why the girls are sick, as in this world, as long as you eat meat, you are healthy and therefore have no reason to be sick. Luckily, they are able to play it off and enjoy their meal, with the exception of Rick, who comes up with an excuse that it is tradition for him to eat last. Rick states that he is part of the oldest family in town that have been around since the beginning of this town. Mary accepts this on the outside and leaves. Since this day, Rick had not brought home any more meat, which led Maya to take some drastic actions to obtain meat for her kids. Maya starts offering favors to Rick's boss, Bob, in exchange for him bringing her the meat she wanted. She continues to do this because she enjoys seeing how much weight the girls are gaining. Her resentment of Rick grows, as does his for her. Their marriage is dissolved into pretty much nothing at this point. Now, you may wonder if Maya knows that the meat that they eat is people. And the answer is yes. Both her and the girls know, and we know this because Maya walks in on the girls having a tea party with a dismembered Barbie as a snack. So they know, they just don't care. And in my opinion, it's because the mutilation process. Like how I explained with Snipe, they disfigure these people as babies for the purpose of slaughter. This is what this woman is cheating on her husband for. And I know it's hard for us to fathom living in a society like this, but this is their status quo, as enforced by the Grand Bishop and his welfare parsons like that nosy Mary. Mary is that one person who does not in any capacity know how to stay in her lane. Let me explain. She was still suspicious of the Shanty family, so she starts digging through public records for who the heck knows why. She does discover something very interesting when looking through the Shanty family records. It states that Rick's parents actually had 2 sons, both of them deceased shortly after birth. Now, it's obvious to her that there's been some sort of deception, whether it's in the records or whoever the hell Rick Shanty actually is. On one hand, she does feel a moral duty to keep digging into shit that ain't her business. On the other hand, she realizes that if this all did occur when Rick was a baby, the fraud was not committed by him, but he and his family would still lose their status as members of the town. Given she believes the fraud was committed when he was a child, she does consider him innocent. Deeper digging does show that Rick's father was displaying some inappropriate behavior towards some nursing cows, and the puzzle pieces are falling into place. Now, Mary is at a crossroads with what to do with this information, and unfortunately she does not have time to continue her unnecessary investigation as she faints from her failing health. She wakes in the chambers of the Grand Bishop, where she is diagnosed with the shakes. Now, this is upsetting because the shakes are essentially a death sentence. It's the most common cause of death among parsons. According to the Book of Giving, the parsons are required to eat and drink milk for all 3 meals, which explains why the max life expectancy in this town is 45. Given her physical situation and her self-inflicted conundrum involving the Shanty family, she is not able to keep searching. She relays all the information she learns to the Grand Bishop. The Grand Bishop agrees that it is strange and will continue looking into it for her. He did know about a rumor that a parson did tamper with some public records many years ago. They believe it's connected to the mystery that is Rick Shanty. I've already discussed a sliver of how cruel Rory can be, given what he did to our least favorite dairy boy Gerbil. However, that's probably the tamest thing he does this whole book. Shortly after the incident, he does receive word that John's causing a bit of an issue. He's converted so many people to his way of life that it's affecting the demand for meat and, in turn, his money. Of course, by that I mean there's still a vast majority of people in this town who can't afford meat, and instead of lowering the cost and make it more accessible, he's keeping prices high and people starving for the sake of money. He orders Bob, Yes, the same Bob, and his people to dump the rotting meat that didn't sell. God forbid any decent people run this goddamn town. So not only does John have issues with the Grand Bishop from a religious standpoint, he's got issues with Rory from a monetary standpoint. So like any completely level-headed megalomaniac with more dollars than brain cells, he has John captured and brought to him, and he wants to know what the hell he's saying to people to convince them to join his cause and not eat meat. And John is all too eager to tell him. According to John's philosophy, people would live longer without meat, and the reason the life expectancy in this town is so low is because meat is toxic, and by extension, the Book of Giving is toxic. Now, Rory doesn't care about the Book of Giving. He states that business was here before God, placing himself higher than the Grand Bishop. They continue their little back and forth with Rory getting increasingly nervous because he notices that John doesn't seem too scared that he's gonna die. In John's head, however, he's like,
"Not today, Satan."
Because this thin, naked, unarmed man got the jump on Rory and makes a 007 level escape into thin air. Now, Rory was knocked unconscious by John, and when he comes to, he vows to stop at nothing to get the heretic priest. Rory also comments on his physical health declining almost like Mary. He blames this on John and not the fact that he's been eating people his entire life. All that money, yet this motherfucker ain't got a lick of sense. Last note on Rory, he is visited by the doctor who treated Mary, and he relays the information that he overheard Mary tell the Grand Bishop. So Rory starts to think that there's something fishy about Rick as well. So now he also has the Shanty family on his radar, and this does not go well. I'm going to give you a little snippet about Rick and his daughters. This is needed to fully grasp the context of the climax of the book. Now, Rick's empathy for the Chosen has caused a significant dip in his productivity, so much so that his boss Bob tells him to take some time off to get his head on straight. So he returns home to a confused Maya. She's not important to this bit, so I'm ignoring her. Plus, if I give this bitch any more thought, I just really don't like her. Moving on. Rick goes to see his daughters, who are happy that they get to have more time with him because, well, they're 7. They ask Rick to tell them a story, and he does. The story he tells is a borderline blasphemous tale of 2 boys who are almost caught and eaten by a monster as they themselves were searching for meat. They want meat, but they do not want to become meat, yet to someone, they were meat. They do defeat the monster by pushing him out of a window, and in the end, they found a garden full of fruit that they could use to sustain themselves forever. Remember that. John makes it back to his followers. Upon learning what happened, they realize it's time for war. Their first attack is on the gas plant. In the dead of night, they knock out the employees working and blow it up. This leaves the town without any power. No power means most of the meat plant functions are slowed, if not completely halted, as it's pretty reliant on machines. The biggest issue with this is the gas plant is so old that the people who built it are dead, and they didn't leave an instruction manual. People are scrambling to figure out how to build a gas-powered system basically from scratch with no guide. Prognosis? No bueno. Rory is well aware of this, and my man's is not happy to say the least. He has the gas plant night shift employees brought to his home, and for their failures to protect the gas plant, Rory has the entire lot of them slaughtered. Not like how he did with our friend Gerbil. No. Rory gets his own hands dirty here. Rory viciously stabbed these people to death for something that's basically out of their control. They were not prepared for someone to attack the gas plant. No one was. Not Rory, not the Grand Bishop, yet these handful of employees were blamed. This is really upsetting because they didn't do anything wrong. It's just senseless and violent for the sake of senseless violence, and that is just who Rory Magnus is. Now, this section of the book is probably the longest because it is the climax of the book, and it involves a lot of moving pieces I do need to go over. As previously mentioned, Rick is on Rory's radar. The suspicious circumstances of his birth, plus the possible connection to John, Rory decides to have Maya and the twins kidnapped and taken to his home. Rory tries to ask Maya about Rick, but obviously she doesn't know anything, except that she wants to f*** him, and f*** him she does. Except Rory isn't too into it. Maya's too eager, and he likes a fight.
What the fuck?
With the length of time he had to wine and dine Rick's wife, he does start to wonder where the hell Rick is. Now, Rory's perceived lack of concern for Rick's family does very disgusting things to Rory. He tells his lackeys to blindfold and restrain Maya so they can do whatever they want with her, and to call him when they were done so they could take their time with her. Then they will get started on the twins.
Oh! Ew!
You're probably wondering, where the hell is Rick? Well, he came home to an empty house and a note saying to come to Rory's mansion. Before he could do this, he is kidnapped and taken to the Grand Bishop's dungeon to be interrogated about who he really is. Rick only knows himself as Rick, so he has no idea what the Grand Bishop is talking about. However, in order to be released to save his family, he does reveal the location of John and his followers. Finally free, he sprints to the Magnus mansion. He finds out very quickly what he and his lackeys have been doing to Maya. The only way out of it is to bring John to Rory alive, and he would let Rick's family go. So he has directed both the Bishop's Parsons and Rory's people to John. The Parsons, however, are nowhere to be found. This is because John and his followers managed to kill all of the Parsons, even though they were severely outnumbered. They play this off as the Breatharian lifestyle has elevated their existence as they're all connected and able to fight as one. Not saying it makes much sense, I'm just saying that's what they're saying. Rick ends up abandoning Rory's men because they're too slow to keep up with him. He sprints back to the mansion to try to save his family. However, he is overpowered and placed into this coffin-like cage. As unfortunate that it is that he was captured, there is some good to come out of it. Right before Rick caused his scene, Rory was in his bedroom with Hema and Hersha. They did not get that far, but far enough that I need to call Olivia Benson. The girls use Rory dealing with their father as a chance to run and hide. A smart move on their part. They clearly get their intelligence from their father. They hide in a chest in Rory's room. They do not go far, but they are out of sight of that monster. And the girls don't even need to hide that long because John and his followers reach the mansion. The two forces collide with casualties on both ends, and Rory's just barking orders from his bedroom window to kill all the heretics. Now this is where Hema and Hersha absolutely girl bossed it. They pop out of their hiding place with the goal of being sneaky, but after accidentally making noise, the girls decide to recreate the story their father told them. They charge Rory, pushing him out the window, where he landed on a spike fence. Iconic, truly. Unfortunately, it didn't kill him, but
patience is a virtue.
The spikes only impale his legs, and the weight of his body causes the flesh to rip. It's what he deserves. John wins the fight against Rory's men and goes to rescue Rick. When he does, he informs him that Maya is dead. We do not have the specifics on what happened, but given how Rory is, use your imagination. Or don't. Actually, definitely don't. Ignore me. Don't do that. Moving on, Rick is reunited with his daughters. The Grand Bishop, who's been like 15 steps behind, realizes that his Parsons were defeated and that he needs to prepare for the inevitable riot that is to come from the town. While this entire situation at the mansion is occurring, Parson Mary, who knows her death is inevitable, decides to walk the streets of the town she's known all her life, and she just decides she's gonna die wherever she lands. She did end up at the meat plant in near empty tower, and she decides to go up it, choosing this to be her final resting place. Meanwhile, the bishop makes it to Rory's mansion, where he speaks to an injured Rory who was freed from the fence and is resting in bed. Given what Rory did to Maya, one could only imagine how well he treated the women under his forced employment. And the Grand Bishop gave the women he tormented and abused a chance for revenge. And boy, do they take it. Rory meets his end painfully at the hands of some of his victims. An extraordinarily rare bishop dub. Now Rick and John make their way back to the meat plant, where John makes plans to make his last stand. He tells Rick to take the girls and run away from this madness. He does take the girls and he hides them in a ditch. He does return to John and his followers to help as they battle against the meat plant employees. Now, I mentioned earlier how Rick could understand and communicate with the Chosen. He uses this skill to tell Blue 792 what is happening and that they have a chance to be free. Word spreads among the Chosen, and Rick opens all the pens he can, and he gathers a herd of Chosen to meet the employees that are currently being led by Bob. Yes, that Bob. However, one of Rory's men does end up finding his daughters and uses them as leverage against Rick. Mary is on death's door. Realizing her life has been a lie, she did everything wrong, and with her last bit of strength, she frees the remaining Chosen on behalf of Rick. An employee who disagreed with what Bob was doing by the name of Parfit gave his life to get the girls back to Rick. Once reunited with his children, he leads the Chosen through the town for the people to see what the meat really was. Though Maya and the twins knew what the meat was, it wasn't universally common knowledge around this town, so imagine looking out of your window and seeing the cattle that you eat are actually just people. Now Bob manages to get his hands on John and executes him via decapitation. The head falls right next to where Mary had collapsed after freeing the Chosen. When she looks at John's head, she notices a scar on his neck, like from a failed ritual that they do to the newborns of the Chosen. Then it all makes sense to her. Rick's father took 2 newborn twins from the Chosen and raised one with neither of them knowing about each other. With this revelation, Parson Mary Simonson finally passes away. With John gone, the Grand Bishop turns his attention to Rick, and they have an exchange where in front of the town, he denounces the Book of Giving, stating it was written by man, and basically bullshit. With that, Rick takes his daughters and continues to lead the Chosen as well as the remaining followers of John out of town. Bob and the bishop want them stopped, but neither the stockmen or the townsfolk or even the remaining parsons make a move against them. They all simply watch as they all leave to walk their path of true freedom. Lord have mercy, that was a rough read, but a read I do not regret. I've been in a bit of a horror kick recently, so you may see more of these from me. When that will be, I do not know. I may be down, but Black Chai Senpai will never be out. As much as I love making these videos, I can't kill myself to make them. If I start doing that, I would lose the fun. And if I'm not having fun doing this, then what's the point? With that said, I will see you when I see you. Remember to drink water and return your library books on time, or else.
Wonder Woman. Sinestro. On my way. I need to charge my ring, and you and I are gonna take a little trip.